Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Welcome to the show. My guest today is the amazing thoughtful leader, Dr. Pauline Crawford. I've known her for a long time, and I'm so delighted to share her with you. She is the founder of Corporate Heart International, and she's known as the Conversation Changemaker. And I have seen her in action, and boy, are you in for a treat. How do you like that build-up, Pauline?
Thank you, Mindy. That is wonderful. It's made me feel very uplifted and purposeful, which is my passion.
I know. And you have so much wisdom to share around conversations and coming from the heart. I'm going to dive right in with that description and ask if those two things are always present in all of your work, heart and conversations.
Absolutely. I think my whole life has been about conversation. And I think this starts from coming from a fairly gregarious family when I was and being in the middle child of four. There was always conversation going on. And I always thought, I want to be part of that. And so it was a very loving family as well. So that's really where the heart is. And combining those two words together, my passion now in 2022 is authentic harmony. So harmony is this, what comes together for me when you have a heartfelt conversation is this great feeling of harmony. And we want it to be authentic. So that's my mission.
Well, you certainly do a good job. And as I said in the little introduction, I've seen you doing your work. We had magical conversations out in Asia. We had some very, very interesting work in London. And you spend a lot of time on the West Coast of the US. So tell everybody what you're up to in the world. And because I know you have another really important project.
Well, I do. And thank you, Mindy, for this. It's not just any conversation. It's especially conversations between men and women, and especially with male and female leaders. So I am interested in the mass population of the world, but I do feel that if leaders don't really understand when conversations are going well or when they're jarring, and they don't understand what impact they're having on the people around them, then the leaders need to relook at the world. And because we've had this opportunity to relook at the world through COVID and the pandemic, what I've observed is that men and women of all different diversities, of different ages, of different cultures. You mentioned we were in Malaysia. So I'm British. I lived in Malaysia. Now I live in the US. And at the moment, I'm working globally online with Africa and Europe and Canada and South America. And actually, the world is shifting rapidly through conversations that we have as we're having online, as well as face-to-face. So it's really important to understand where the heart comes into the harmony. So that for me is really important, is when does it jar and when does it flow? So I look at things like mind flow and mind flowing into the heart and the heart flowing out to the world. And how do we stand as a light for authenticity and harmony? You know, we've just had Peace Day. We look a lot at relationships and communication, but we know there's a lot of, dare I say, arguments going on around the world, and not just between men and women, between women and men and men, and different generations, all the diversities. But what I want to do is get down to the core. What do we do, say, think, and feel when it goes right and when it goes wrong? And what are we prepared to do about it when it goes wrong? I always say to my clients, when everything is going to flow smoothly, you don't really need me and my team. It's when there's a situational issue. And what often happens is that we make it something external. It must be the IT system, or it must be the fact that it rained this morning. Actually, no, I think it's actually to do with what we're believing we know about ourselves and we know about the other people around us. And actually, to be honest, I think it does feel complex sometimes, but it's really simple because it's about knowing that you want that authentic harmony in the first place.
Thank you, because I was thinking as you were speaking, it's about the intention, and that's what the thoughtful leader is all about, having the intention and acting on it, and it's a choice. So, just like with all my guests, I would say that having impactful and harmonious conversations and even achieving harmony is a choice, and it may require some work. One of the things I'm fond of saying is I love to have a chat. It's my favorite thing. But when we say have a chat, you'll know this from being, so many years in the UK, it can be an in-depth, really important, really poignant conversation. It sounds very lighthearted. Do you feel the same?
I do. And one of the things I've become really aware of is that perceptions and perspectives all come muddling in. And the way we say anything is probably most likely to be misinterpreted by most people around us, even those who love us. So to be very aware of that. So I recently was challenged about, I said, what does authentic harmony look like in action in the world? Oh, I suppose you mean it's sort of fluffy. And I said, oh, no. Actually, it's a piece of music that we want to listen to, but it doesn't mean that it's just easy. So when we come to the table of authentic harmony, we are there to understand each other so that we can deal with the difficult issues of life. So, we know there's economic stress at the moment. We know that there's a lot of health issues, there's mental awareness, there's wars, there's prejudices, there's so many arguments going on. So I'm not saying that we would suddenly wipe these out when we have authentic harmony. The authentic harmony is the starting point. So what I'm exploring with people is how do you come to the table in order to discuss something? So in a corporation, it might be customer service, it might be leadership, it might be collaboration. In the communities, and I'm very involved with a very fascinating project in Africa where the issue is about the communities and whether or not they can eliminate violence against women and girls. Now, this gender-based violence is a huge issue, not just in Africa, but virtually every country in the world, because there are still issues around there. So how do you come to a table and sit there in your own style, knowing who you are and knowing the others around the table and knowing that everybody's coming from a different perspective? And that's the idea of the magical conversation. It's an ability to listen and contribute without making instant judgments or assumptions or get angry or through anything that will stop the flow. And these are tricky subjects. So actually, the idea that conflict is a force for good is an interesting part of authentic harmony. And I'm fascinated that the pandemic has given us an opportunity to go both ways, but many people are saying, right, we need to do things differently. And this issue in Africa is actually being challenged by 6 African presidents of 6 Central African countries. Now, it's really unusual that these are men standing up with a charter saying that we will eliminate violence against women and girls. And they've called it positive masculinity.
I love it. I was very worried when you brought in the idea of the 6 presidents saying something. I thought you were going to say the opposite, that they were critical of the initiative. So this is really, really important. And, I understand that you're doing this, I'm going to call it mediation work with a little m. Yeah. It's so necessary in business and politics and, just to solve social issues, global issues. One of the interesting things we talk about here is being open-minded. And because you mentioned the word challenge, we have found it challenging to use the gender-based terms, men and women. And so I would ask your permission if we can, for the rest of this conversation at least, just say all genders, to include non-binary, to include transgender and any other. Is that okay?
That's fine. I mean, the issue for me is not any of that. It's actually that we all live in the circle of life. So actually, it's important that when you're looking at a particular situation in the world, as these African presidents are, and what's interesting, it was an initiative by the special attaché to the DRC Congo president, who is a woman, who is very passionate about human rights. And so generally, this is impacting all genders, but I think also we need to just say all human beings, because what's happening here is that we don't want violence. Now, obviously, physical violence is abhorrent, but there's violence in the words that people use in the boardroom, and they are between different groups of diversities. So actually, I'm not ignoring the issue about different gender types, but for me, it's about human behavior. So we respond and we react. And sometimes we don't understand the difference between responding and reacting. And that's when you go to the heart. So let's go back to the beginning. The heart of a business, the heart of a community, the heart of any relationship is that emotional responsibility and response. Able as the way we respond comes from the nature of who we are. So I look at archetypal behavior, which has nothing to do with gender identity or sexual preferences or race or age. I'm of a certain age, slightly different to yourself and to my granddaughter, who is a lot younger than me, obviously. But we all have things in common, and we have energies, and we have emotions, and we do have biology, and we have personality, and we have experience, and all those things come into the mix of the conversation. So the minute we say something, if we say it with authentic energy, authentic power from within, it's an expression of who we are. And I do believe that we sometimes get very waylaid by external pressures and issues which are out there in the news and the media and social media, etc. And we don't just stay in the moment. Is what I'm doing impacting this other person or this group of people? Are we moving forward? Are we actually listening? I ran magical conversations in Malaysia with women about women, because it was just what we did. And we had very many different religions around the circle in that country, because there's Buddhist, there's Hindu, there's Muslim, there's also Christian, and there were also women with no particular religious affiliation. But we all were common in talking about, how do we get our voice heard? How do we do something that we want to do? So I love simultaneous equations. I see conversations as simultaneous equations, that we're all sitting there and we're, especially women, chattering, talking. And are we listening? Are we truly listening to each other, to ourselves, and to the situation in hand? Because if we don't, then it's a bit of a waste of time.
You have hit on a really important point, Pauline, because I wouldn't even be gender specific about that. I think there are people who don't listen. There are people who, just talk for various reasons, the need to be heard, the need, attention seeking, or just really passionate about their subject. So a conversation, what I hear you saying and what I've witnessed in your work, is a two-way street, in the sense that you are actively listening so you can respond, and everybody is gaining and giving, so giving and receiving value. That's the way I perceive it. What I think is really important about your work is that it has transformed over the years. And so I'd like, with the time we have left, for you to share your absolute biggest, most exciting project. Maybe it's the one in Africa, maybe it's something else, and that people can follow you, because we're putting the show notes and the bio on the site. And I would encourage everybody to connect and follow Pauline. So, Pauline, what do you have going on at the moment?
Well, it's very much about this idea of authentic harmony. So that's what I talk about. And the byline to that keynote is say goodbye to equality, hello to harmony. And people may take offense to that, but I think we've been fighting so long for equality that we shouldn't fight for it. We should just be it. And that harmony, as in an orchestra piece, the orchestra plays a piece of music. It has the strings, it has the percussion, it has the drums, it has the piano maybe, it has the orchestra conductor. You need all of the pieces to come together. So defining those pieces and not getting trapped into, well, I'm a violinist, so I'm the best. You go, well, actually, we need the drums as well at this point, and we need the little ting on the triangle at the end. Everything is part of the mission of that piece. So how do we really shift the leadership with authentic harmony? And what does that mean to people? What does it mean to business? That's what I'm most passionate about. But I am involved with this idea of positive masculinity, positive femininity in all of us, in any sexual preference, any gender identity. And what does that mean? And what does it mean for the evolution of our world and the planet? And we can actually spend more time dealing with the problems as opposed to arguing between each other as to who is whoever. We would actually get a lot further with economic sustainability and climate change, and maybe Mother Earth would not be so violent in its disasters if it knew that we were caring about her. That's my spiritual mission, is to understand that if authentic harmony is going to be a value at the table, then we need to, in fact, accept everybody egoless, but love them for the value that they are.
Really beautifully explained. Thank you very much. I hear those two words, authentic and harmony, and each one offers something special. Is it possible to have inauthentic harmony or unharmonious, disharmonious authenticity?
For me, no. There's some pieces of music that I don't particularly like. So I'm not particularly a jazz fan. And I was invited to the Hollywood Bowl, actually, to see an amazing jazz band. But for me, jazz in that sense is a little bit disharmonious, but obviously it's not for a jazz fan. So I think it's also about understanding that authentic harmony is not going to mean the same for everybody. But if we said we want a world without toxic bad behavior, then we have to have a conversation at the table about what that is and what is authentic, what is harmony to me, and listen. So remember, the key here is that when you're having a magical conversation, you're not making a judgment and you're bringing in your experience. And you may hear things that you don't particularly agree with, but you just say to yourself or the person, well, that's an interesting perspective. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, but I'm allowing it to be. And the only thing we're not allowing is something which is going to destroy the harmony.
And at The Thoughtful Leader, we talk about being bold yet respectful. And I think respect and courtesy go a long way. In fact, you can't really do any of this work. You can't have a productive or harmonious or authentic conversation if you're not going to be respectful and courteous. And respect is probably, if I were to rebrand all my work and have a new word to represent it, that's probably it, because it underpins so much. And we are experiencing, if I may, a lack of respect in various groups of people, a lack of respect towards our planet, a lack of respect towards authority figures just because people like mouthing off. And I agree with you so much that it is counterproductive. It is very difficult to move things forward when people are so focused on being critical, being angry, and filled with hate. So I just wanted to bring that out as a contrast, because I think if the listeners and viewers are wondering, shall I explore this? I'm thinking that if they recognize that there are these emotions and there are these issues, of at least criticism, if not outright hatred, lack of respect. Is that a place to start looking, or is it something else?
I often use the metaphor of nature, because nature is such a good teacher for us. It's like, how do we respect the forest? The forest has lots of different trees. So the oak tree and the willow tree, just taking those two, are very different. So if the willow starts saying, well, I don't like you, oak tree, I don't think you should be in the forest, because I'm much better. I'm very soft. And the oak tree says, no, I'm really strong and tall. But we know what's similar about trees. Everybody knows that a tree has to have roots. Otherwise, it's not going to be there. And I think we've really got to understand that respect for human life is so vital, and that the earth is part of our human life. Just to go out and put your feet on the ground and feel the energy of the earth and recognize that in the middle of the earth there's molten lava, and out there we're in this universe hanging around in some kind of solar system. And actually relationships are like that. So have respect for the combination of what's going around you. And if something's feeling sad or unhappy, just go with it. But if you're angry and hateful, as you say, that is negative, and it's going to impact not only your own health, but everybody else. So I think getting people to really understand there was a simple core, and maybe we should introduce smiling and laughter as well as respect, because that is actually the essence of life. That's what makes a tree grow, is the joy of having roots and having the right conditions to grow in. And yes, we've got a rather tortured world at the moment, but in our own moment of time, we can make a statement of gratitude just to be able to breathe.
Thank you for that reminder. And I think you'll find a very receptive audience in our listeners and viewers, because, there's plenty of people who don't make time to listen to thoughtful conversations or the Thoughtful Leader podcast or anything thoughtful. They're busy, busy, busy. It's interesting that you said about joy. I used to use that word a lot. Just as an aside, Pauline and I met through a network called Academy, and it was, for me, a wonderful experience, both professionally and personally. And one of the things that we were encouraged to do is put 50 words together, individual words, to describe ourselves. I don't know if you remember that. And in your profile, 50 words. One of mine was joy. And I never really use that word or think about it, but it's kind of there. So thank you for that reminder. Pauline and I are both very smiley. If you're watching the video, you get to experience that, but hopefully you can hear it in our voices if you're listening just to the audio. We have about 1 minute left. So how would you like people to connect with you, Pauline? And what's one tiny nugget or piece of advice that you would give them?
Well, definitely LinkedIn is my favorite place to be connected with. I find that a very authentic and harmonious place to be. And I think one piece of advice is just remember being in the moment and to be your best. So be your best means be extraordinary starting today.
Fantastic advice, fantastic conversation here. And I really, really appreciate your coming on the show, and I appreciate you. And I really hope people will connect and follow. And we will meet again and we will converse again. Thank you, Pauline. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader, and I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindygk.com. Speak to you again soon.